Market Journal, television for agricultural business decisions, is a presentation of the University of Nebraska Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine.
Hello everyone, I'm Bryce Duskett and thank you for joining us today on Market Journal. The month of September is here and combines are rolling across many parts of the Cornhusker State. We sure appreciate you taking time to join us on this week's broadcast. Now, coming up this week, we'll be taking a look at how NASA's Earth Science Division is impacting research at UNL. Plus, we'll get a check of the markets with Darin Newsom. But first, next week will mark the start of this year's Husker Harvest Days event, which takes place near Grand Island. For more than 40 years now, Husker Harvest Days has delivered top-notch events for ag producers, and Nebraska Extension will have a big part of this year's event. From weather extremes to marketing challenges, Nebraska producers have seen it all this year. These are just a few of the examples of what you can expect to hear Extension educators discussing at the Big Red Building as they promote this year's theme of leveraging innovation and growing your legacy.
Well, they should first be expected to be welcomed into our booth area, because we always like to let people know how important it is to us that they are there to come and allow us to share with some information with them for us to gain some interaction with those folks. And so people can expect to be welcome. And then as they go around, we have 14 different display areas in our booth with an adjacent large tent that where we have kind of our career zone. And so when people come in, they should ask, where is a particular topic, or is there somebody who can help me with some information on a particular topic? And if we have that available, we'll certainly direct you to that. But there's just a lot of things that people can come and see what's new, see some of the new technologies, see some things that will just help farmers with their operations. We also have people from horticulture here that will be talking about people's landscapes and their trees, and then of course mention about our careers. When students come, or families that have students that are looking at agricultural careers, make sure and come in and ask about that, and we can direct you to some folks that are trying to help get some career readiness, and to talk about starting your career at the University of Nebraska College of Agricultural and Natural Resources, or at the Nebraska College of Technical Agriculture.
Well, Extension educators are always available to help you in several different areas. Stopping by the Nebraska Extension building can give you an opportunity to get invaluable face-to-face time with Extension experts in just about any field imaginable.
And we have educators and specialists in these specific topic areas from across the state. And so if you have a relationship with your local educator, you can come and visit with them about some specific topics that we're highlighting. But then there's also this group of others that are teams from across the state working on specific topic areas. Like we have some folks that are going to be here talking about soil health and cover crops. And so if you have questions about that particular topic that you may not have a local educator that's specifically working on, we'll have a team there that will be there available to talk about that. Or if you have opportunity to use manure on your crop, we have a team that will be there that can talk about that. We have a team that are talking about beef systems and using new technologies such as drones and cameras and smart feeders. All those things that your local educator may be involved in or have knowledge about, but here is the team that can really tell you about that information and answer your questions face to face. So it's just a great opportunity to get some of that information.
Our Market Journal team will also be out and about at this year's Husker Harvest Days. We look forward to catching up with you, so be sure to say hello if you see us out at the show. If you would like more information on Nebraska Extension's presence at the event, we've included a link along with this story, which is available on the Market Journal website. As we gear up for next week's Husker Harvest Days show, the one thing that no one enjoys is dust. Back in 2018, show organizers actually paved the interior streets, but surrounding the grounds are still gravel roads. That typically means water is applied to control that dust. New this year is a soy-based product that was applied back in August to help keep that dust in the ground. The Nebraska Soybean Board sponsored environmental dust control of the Midwest to spray the roads at Husker Harvest Days. Formulated by the company, DustLock works to not only keep dust down, but also eliminate mud and erosion of gravel. Dan Feige talks about the benefits of using soybean oil for dust control.
The biggest thing is the road stabilization. The oil does a stabilization process for the top half inch of the road. It stabilizes the surface so it doesn't move. You won't have any more washboard on the road. We blade it up to begin with, and then the way you leave it is the way it's going to stay. The oil will maintain that, as opposed to a water-based product where it may still continue to move and wind up with washboard. Oil doesn't let it move, so it's very, very stable. And of course, dust control is kind of a fringe benefit.
He says the product, which is known as DustLock, is non-corrosive and friendly to equipment and the environment alike.
We've done what they call an SF50 lab test, which is where we put goldfish in it, and they can actually survive. They can live in this oil. It's that organic. It's pretty amazing. I mean, I wouldn't want to put my fish in and eat them in a gallon of oil or anything, but we've done all kinds of testing with labs in Colorado and Minnesota and into South Dakota and all that sort of thing, trying to prove out that this oil really is safe. It's not caustic, it's not corrosive, it's just soybean oil, and it's just going to basically, even if you track it up on your vehicle a little bit, it does come off very easy with a little bit of warm water and a little bit of hot water and a little bit of Dawn dish soap, so it comes off easy.
He says it's best to spray when the ground is dry and able to stay dry for a couple of days to give that soybean oil molecule enough time to stick and withstand water.
So we come in with a scarifier. It's carbide tipped or carbide blades, and we like to sweep all the loose stuff off. We only want about a quarter inch of loose on top, so the oil has a chance to not only inhibit that top quarter inch, but go into the base of the road. Then we cover it right back up and keep it dry. So we scarify it, we oil it, then we put a dry top over it so you can use the road right away, instantly. The biggest thing about roads is people don't like to have the roads not working, so we figured out a way to basically get in and out pretty quick with the two trucks, so that's kind of why we do that.
DustLock has been applied in other parts of the state and across the Midwest. Application locations include heavy traffic gravel roads near elevators, hog barns, feedlots, and new community developments. Feige says that a clay base is best to work with.
Yeah, we have to have a clay base. We kind of like clay the best. Black dirt or red dirt doesn't work. We need some kind of an aggregate or a gravel. Recycled asphalt's our #1 prescription. If we got a customer that has access to recycled asphalt, 2 to 3 inch layer of that, we'll seal it with the oil and then roll it, pack it down tight, and it's like an asphalt road. So, yeah, no dirt.
The Nebraska Soybean Board again sponsoring that application, something that Husker Harvest Days attendees can check out when visiting the show this year. Signage will mark those roads where the product was applied, and DustLock, that company, will have a booth at lot 507, which is right behind the Commodities Building on Main Street. Moving on now over to the markets. This week we were joined by Darin Newsom of Darin Newsom Analysis. Several viewers submitted their questions that we were able to ask Darin, but we began that discussion on Wednesday afternoon by catching up on the latest activity that was impacting the grain markets. Well, there's always a number of factors we'll jump into to discuss why the markets are trading the way they are. But before we do that, just let's get your general take on these markets as of late.
It's something that, we've been talking about. There's one word to describe things, and it's just strong. We're looking at a bunch of strong markets here. It doesn't matter if we're talking about the U.S. dollar, if we're talking about basis, if we're talking about wheat, if we're talking about any of these markets. As we start this meteorological fall season, the key word, the word of the day, the word of the season is simply just strong.
As you use that word strong, Darin, I'm sure the viewer at home is going to be wanting me to ask you, how long do you see that strong outlook lasting, particularly as it relates to the grain complex?
corn and soybeans, if we look out at the future spreads, and particularly if we want to take the whole of the market in, look at the DEES July future spread and the NOVE July future spread in soybeans, they're both showing very little carry. And so what this tells us is that the commercial side of the market's concerned about supplies to meet demand over the next marketing year. We finished the 2021-22 marketing year in a very tight situation. We know this from the cash markets. We know this from basis. And now as we go ahead into 2022-23, situation hasn't changed all that much. The weather was still a problem. Not just here in the United States, but also China and possibly in Brazil as it moves through spring and summer. So, I mean, weather is still the issue. Supplies are still tight. Demand remains strong. So I look forward to at least last, for most of the 2022-23 marketing year. I'm just not seeing any signs of change.
Darin, you mentioned there's not much carry in the market. I want to jump to a viewer question we had submitted this week. Justin wrote in and was curious your thoughts. He noted that he has on-farm storage, but was curious when he starts harvesting here, his typical strategy is to fill those grain bins, then start hauling to town. He wants to know if it'd be advantageous of him to maybe haul some of that early to town, take advantage of that basis that's pretty strong out there right now, particularly here in Nebraska. Your thoughts, Darin?
Yeah, this is a great example of the gambler's dilemma, and what I mean by that's the classic song. You got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them. And this is going to be a difficult year because there is no carry in the market. The market's not paying you to store; it's paying you up front. Basis should stay strong as well. So I would. If I have more than what I'm expecting to put in a bin, I'm probably just going to sell it right off the combine. I don't want to hold it that long. If I can hedge it at some point and wait for basis to appreciate into my position, that would work as well. But just point blank, if I've got some grain that I need to move, I'm going to sell it as quickly as possible. It's what the market's telling me to do. Newsom's market rule number 2: let the market dictate our actions. No carry, might as well sell.
Darin, I understand you recently made a trip across Nebraska. You saw some fields being harvested. What have you heard in terms of yield, if anything, from producers? Some early checks, at least here in the western side of the Corn Belt.
That they're disappointing, but we knew that because it hasn't rained in what seems like forever. I haven't heard any actual yield numbers, just that, with the folks that call in saying, they weren't good. They weren't expected to be good. And the local basis market was telling us that. We've had an incredible push for basis across southern Nebraska, western Nebraska. And even further south across the southern plains, merchandisers are just desperate to get their hands on corn. So this tells us the yields just aren't there and aren't expected to improve as harvest rolls along.
Let's also address some of those global issues. You kind of hinted at a few of them. It seems like domestically the weather continues to be that story, but globally, what are some of the things you're watching?
Yeah, globally, number one is obviously the weather, and everyone wants to point to the currencies, but I don't think that's the issue right now, because the U.S. dollar is strong, but it's not going to stop demand for U.S. grains because countries are going to buy. The buyers are going to try to find it wherever they can. It doesn't really matter about the strength or weakness of a currency. We also have to keep a close eye, obviously, on what's going on in Ukraine as we head towards, as we make our way through fall and head towards winter. And, the China-Taiwan situation, I think it's on hold until we have a better feel for the Brazilian production. But I think it's all going to come down to the spring-summer weather in Brazil. I think that's going to be a key element here over the next 3 to 6 months.
Wheat market has had an interesting day as you and I have this conversation on Wednesday. Issues in Ukraine always kind of seems to be what we go back to over the last several months. What can you share with our viewers on that front?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of fresh information from Ukraine. The only thing that I can tell, looking at the way the Chicago market has reacted, is that the grain that's being shipped out of Ukraine right now must be low quality, possibly not even qualifying as low quality, because we've seen an incredible move, incredible jump in the Chicago wheat, the soft red winter market, despite the fact that the U.S. dollar has climbed to more than a 20-year high. So, this tells me that there's still problems. And then we throw in the idea, that Australia is going to have near record production this year. That still, Chicago market wants to go up. There's more brewing. Something tells me that a lot of it still is tied to the lack of supplies coming out of Ukraine, and the possibility there just may not be any 23 crops in the Black Sea region. That's going to keep our markets pretty active here over the next year.
Darin, another viewer wrote in this week and noted USDA has had some challenges when it came to their data reporting. I think he was poking the bear a little bit when it comes to that. Have you followed some of these issues USDA has seen as of late?
No, and there's no need to. I mean, yeah, so they broke their export sales reporting system, which came out every Thursday. So what? I mean, they had a system that was at least usable, and that was probably the only one that they had that had any relevant data. And so they broke it. That's just the way it goes. I'm not overly worried about it. The market still tells us what it tells us, and we can still read supply and demand in the future spreads and basis. Do we know the actual numbers of exports at this point? No. Does it matter? Not really.
Darin, before we let you go, final word is yours this week. What would you like to leave our viewers with?
The biggest thing is we've got to be careful with these markets. They're red hot. They've been going up. They're getting into overbought situations. Now, they could stay that way for quite some time, but what we have to watch out for is these quick moves, these quick reversals. These can happen at any time. Seasonally, both corn and soybeans still look like they're in a bullish time of year. But again, the flow of the non-commercial money is key. Fundamentally, we're going to stay bullish, so we've got to watch the flow of the investment money. If that starts to change, so could trends.
Again, thanks to Darin for his time this week. Coming up next week, we'll be joined by DTN's Todd Holman and UNL Livestock Marketing and Risk Management Specialist Elliot Dennis. We'll visit with both of them from the grounds of Husker Harvest Days. Now, if you have a question for either of them you'd like me to ask, feel free to email us or get in touch on social media, and I'll be sure to pass those questions along. Retired Nebraska farmer Dick Areta and his wife Caroline are on a great adventure. Leaving Imperial, Nebraska on July 12th, they're driving a 1977 International Harvester 574 tractor all the way to Fairbanks, Alaska. Why, you might be asking? That's to raise awareness and money for medical research for Children's Hospital Colorado Foundation in Denver, which is a cause near and dear to both of them. At the last report, the couple was traveling on a highway about 700 miles from Fairbanks. You can read all about their tractor trip for kids in the September issue of the Nebraska Farmer. Quite an adventure for the two of them. It is now time to check in on weather with Nebraska Extension AG Climatologist and Market Journal's Chief Meteorologist Al Dutcher. Al, I mentioned that harvest has begun for several producers in Nebraska. How's the weather looking for those producers in the field and for those planning a trip to Husker Harvest Days next week?
Well, Bryce, we had a fairly benign week. We had very warm temperatures. Then we seen this cold front come through, and what a change. From the hundreds out, or upper 90s to low 100s out west. Now we're looking at 70s to low 80s for this weekend. 30-degree drop in temperatures coupled with clouds and rain makes for an ugly game. It's going to feel rather chilly with that kind of a temperature drop. And if you're going to the game into Lincoln there today, bundle up. It's going to be a raw day, and I would basically count on getting a little bit soaked with the ongoing precipitation. Now, as we look forward into the future, it does appear subtly that we might be seeing a shift away from this very dry pattern to a more aggressive troughing pattern in the western United States. We'll see how that plays out, but at least there's several more opportunities for precipitation as we go through the next 7 to 10 day period. So we look at the upper air miles. The first thing I'll draw your attention to is we have this big upper air troughs, the center of the upper air low over the western Hudson Bay region, extending toward the southwest into the Central Plains. And as this pivots toward the east-southeast, we will continue to see the precipitation shield itself shift also with this frontal boundary. So precipitation will come to an end in western Nebraska. It's probably going to linger all day here in eastern Nebraska before starting to end during the overnight hours. Temperatures are going to be cool. We're primarily in the lower to mid 70s in the southeast, upper 60s northeast, and probably the mid 70s to maybe the low 80s in the southwestern corner. As we go into tomorrow, this upper air low now pivots toward Iowa. We still going to have some wraparound cloud cover to deal with in eastern Nebraska. So we may see that clouds hang on for the first half of the day before we get some sunny skies developing during the afternoon hours. And the quicker this moves, the warmer it's going to get. So in western Nebraska, we're probably going to bump 5 degrees on our temperatures under sunnier skies. In eastern Nebraska with the cloud cover, we're probably going to get stuck in the low to mid 70s. As we go into the day on Monday, this upper air now moves over into central Illinois. We get a slight northwest flow aloft in eastern Nebraska. That's going to keep our temperatures a little bit cooler than western Nebraska, but we're still going to recover somewhat. We're probably looking at the low 80s across the east and the mid to upper 80s across the west with a few isolated 90s possible as the center of this high pressure ridge starts to move eastward. As we get into the day on Tuesday, the upper air low now moves over to the southern Great Lakes. Ridging starts to build into the Central Plains, much warmer conditions, primarily back in the low to mid 80s across the east, and the upper 80s to low 90s across the southwest. Wouldn't be surprised in the southwest corner to see 95-degree reading pop out of this. Now, as we get into the day on Wednesday, we'll see that upper air low now moving toward the northeastern United States. We see a trough trying to build into the western United States. It's going to shoot a little bit of energy out toward the northern plains. Some of that may make it into southwestern and western Nebraska, but it looks like it'll be very, very light precipitation. And if this can hold together, some of this might make it into southeastern Nebraska, but I wouldn't count on anything significant in terms of moisture. Now, as we get in next Thursday, this upper air low takes its way off into the eastern United States. High pressure ridge stays subdued across the southern plains, so that's where the real heat's going to be. There's a channel developing between this high pressure system and this trough to the west that may allow some moisture to move in. But right now it doesn't look like much in the way of significant moisture except for eastern Nebraska. We may see some shower activity. And then as we get into Friday, a little bit better monsoonal flow comes around this and this trough comes a little bit closer. So we may see some decent moisture breakout, particularly across the eastern half of the state as we go through the day on Friday. Longer term, next Thursday, the following Tuesday, warm conditions entail. And in terms of precipitation, looks like an aggressive precipitation pattern for the northern half of the plains.
Thanks, Al. Finally today, when you hear the term NASA, you likely think of outer space. However, not everything in NASA is focused beyond the Earth. The Space for Ag initiative within the Earth Science Division of NASA promotes the use of Earth observation to strengthen food and water security, support market stability, and protect human livelihood. Last month, the University of Nebraska Lincoln actually hosted several delegates from this division of NASA for local farm tours, as well as keynote speakers for the Heuermann Lecture, Space for Ag. Market Journal's Bill Dodd brings us this story.
The Heuermann Lecture series focuses on providing security. That means global security in the areas of food, natural resources, and renewable energy for people. And that all starts with securing the sustainability of rural communities where the vital work of producing food and renewable energy occurs. The latest installment of the lecture series focuses on the utilization of data gathered from NASA satellites and science to support food and water security here on Earth.
Yeah, several groups on campus have been users of NASA data for decades now, myself included for 25 plus years, particularly in regards to monitoring drought, but also looking at agricultural landscapes, ecosystems, and the influence of climate and climate change on these landscapes is pretty critical. So NASA data, it's big data. It can go from a really fine resolution to a really coarse resolution, so we can cover a lot of scales. And it comes real handy not just for research applications, but also for operational applications like the U.S. Drought Monitor, which is the weekly map that we host here at the National Drought Mitigation Center at the university. So that's one potential use. The other way, if you flip it around, though, is that the university, the research farms, the producers, we all have the ability, this is a living laboratory here where we can actually validate and ground truth the NASA data and models. Does it match reality on the ground? These are important linkages, I think, that we can offer up back to NASA. So it's definitely a two-way street.
Well, I was an assistant professor.
Keynote speaker of the event, Dr. Karen St. Germain, is the director of NASA's Earth Science Division. However, before entering her role at NASA, she was a faculty member here at the University of Nebraska Lincoln. The experiences she had at UNL gave her a unique perspective when it came to the challenges that she's facing in her current position.
My faculty position at the University of Nebraska was my first job out of graduate school. I grew up in the Northeast. So my years here in Lincoln, and I did travel a bit around the state and the region, that was my first time seeing this kind of landscape, this kind of agriculture. And I've been thinking about this problem of bringing remote sensing and that unique vantage point of space to food security and agriculture ever since those days. And it's just a thrill to be able to get back here and meet with people and discuss a path forward together.
Nice to meet you. During their visit to Lincoln, the Earth Science team was able to tour local agricultural operations as well as get a first-hand look at the research happening here at UNL. When it comes to transforming hard data into real-world applications, developing working relationships with university researchers is an incredibly valuable asset.
Well, NASA is a science agency and a data agency. And we use our scientific understanding of the Earth as a system and the data we collect from our assets in space to support a whole range of applications, and agriculture is one of the most important of those. It's really important to get feedback from the people who are trying to use our data and information. It's we do a lot of work to try to make to translate data into actionable information, but it's really only by talking with people who are trying to use that information that we learn where did we get it right, where did we not get it right, and where do we need to do more research, maybe to solve a problem we didn't even know we had. You know, there's a wealth of technical expertise at University of Nebraska and universities around the country, and no one is closer to the producers in those states than the people at the universities who are doing the research. So we like to work with extension programs, universities, regional facilities to take the work that we do at a global level and help us make it most impactful at the local level. Thanks so much, Brad. The only thing I would...
While the latest Heuermann Lecture is an informative insight into how NASA data is collected, analyzed, and transformed into real-world applications, there is one take-home message Dr. St. Germain hopes sticks with the viewers and attendees.
Similar topic.
I would like the big take-home message to be that NASA has a lot of information, data, and research and applications that we think could be useful to producers in Nebraska and around the country, and we'd like to share that information and that insight, but also get the feedback on what they really need, so that as we're building the satellites and the sensors that will launch toward the end of this decade, that we're actually building the right things.
As Mother Nature continues to change and evolve, producers and researchers must follow suit. As long as our producers, universities, and government agencies can continue to collaborate, future technologies stemming from today's research will be out of this world. Reporting for Market Journal, I'm Bill Dodd.
Thank you for that story, Bill. Will be interesting to see the different ways we're able to utilize this data as the years continue to roll along. If you would like to see that full lecture, it is available online. We've taken the liberty of posting a link to that video, which can be found on the Market Journal website. Well, that's going to do it for this week's show. As a reminder, next week we'll be coming to you from the grounds of Husker Harvest Days. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us this week. We hope you'll take the time to see us next week on the show. Until then, I'm Bryce Duskett, wishing you a safe and productive week.
Join Market Journal online at marketjournal.unl.edu. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine. Market Journal is produced by the University of Nebraska Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources.